You know, soon after I was elected chairman of the Science Technology Committee, a reporter asked me what was my area of science. And I told her political science. I try to take the good ideas of folks like you and then get them implemented. And that's what we try to do there. So, you know, what I'd rather to do here is sort of have a conversation. I'm going to make a little overview of the appropriation process, and then maybe be a little bit of a Dutch uncle, and because I think we need to have that type of conversation here. As we said here today, right now, the House is continuing its work on the energy and water bill, and that's where Fusion is. It started last week. There is a $475 approximately $1 billion mark there in the House bill. I don't expect there'll be any. There may be some efforts, but I don't think anything successful will be done on changing that today. The Senate will probably do their work later on in this summer. They're starting from a mark of $400 billion. There's a little bit of a gamesmanship, I would think, in that there's an understanding that the chairman of the House Subcommittee represents Princeton and has a real interest in the fusion process there. And so I think the Senate is sort of lowballing a little bit so that they can get some concession in some other areas. But ultimately, they'll wind up having some type of conference. You know, in the perfect world, which we haven't seen in quite some time, they would then pass all these individual budgets by the end of the fiscal year. That's very unlikely. There may be a couple that get passed, but in all likelihood, there'll be something called a continuing resolution, which means that everything continues at the same funding level. Then we have what will be called the lame duck session. I think this would almost be a crippled duck or an amputee duck. It's going to be there are so many problems that they're going to have to deal with. It simply can't be done with. So they'll wrap all these bills up. They could pass it there. In all likelihood, I won't get into all the tax cuts, all the sequestering that can go along, but there's just lots of problems. They can't be solved easily. I would assume that what Congress will do is what it does best is kick the can a little bit further down the road, maybe give a 6-month extension, and then try to come together with some type of a comprehensive bill that will deal with a lot of these. So there's a lot going on there. What I think you need to know is a couple of things. One, no matter what the figure is, it's not enough. And just because you have a passion for fusion and seeing the need of it, doesn't mean that it's automatically there. There is no entitlement for this funding. You need to understand that. And there are many groups, STEM education people, others are coming to Congress and making the good case of why we need to have more funds, much less don't cut us. And so you cannot just think that there is some type of inherited understanding of this. This is a very critical time. And if sequestration comes in, it's going to be even more difficult. I think, I guess whether you talked about it, everybody knows it, that there is the potential conflict between ITER and domestic. Now, there should not be a conflict. I spent quite a bit of time last night with Dr. Brinkman at a different event. We talked about this. The administration, as we know from other sources, feels very committed here. They think that it's more than just the project, that it is international obligation, and that if they don't go forward with that, they will lose face and have difficulty putting all things together. So they're committed to trying to do either. They also recognize that if we don't have a domestic fusion industry, then we're going to get left behind on this. And all that means, how do you get more money? I think in the short run, what you're going to see is an effort to try to renegotiate with the Europeans. There are some of the equipment that we have a responsibility to provide, that the timeline is such that it is required before it is needed. And so if they can stretch this timeline out a little bit, then you can at least get some short-term relief and try to get over this this initial hump. But we're talking decades potentially, and so there has to be, I think, a mutual game plan between eater and domestic. There has to be a blueprint for the future. You've got to really explain, as the General said earlier, what are the benefits. The public has to understand that. There are some. I'll give you a little anecdote here. There are some, obviously climate change benefits, but there's a story about Harry Truman that a true story. He had a press conference and some reporter asked him something he was irritated by, and his response was, "That's a lot of manure." And so there was a ladies group here in town at the time that, because this was in the paper, and they just thought this was not the right way for a president to speak. And so they went to see Mrs. Truman and told her that was not, respectful language from the President of the United States, and that she needs to get him to stop. Well, her response was, "It took me 30 years to get him to say manure." And so climate change, although there are some benefits, is we can't use that term in Washington. It starts fights, it just ends conversations. But energy independence is something that everybody can understand. It's real, and there are multiple benefits beyond that. And so it is just very important that we have a game plan, we bring all the parties together, that we start the education process, as General Lyles said, and look at this for the long haul. Now, with that, as I said, I wanted to sort of have a conversation, so maybe we can continue yours, continue this one, and any suggestions or thoughts. And let me ask our appropriator down there, you want to add anything to that unpleasant scenario?